Joe Dumars just redefined the Pelicans' vision. His top priority isn't wins or star power. It's a quality you wouldn't have guessed. It's Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Tuesday. It's media day for the New Orleans Pelicans. I will be there interviewing the players, the coaches, all of that. But we're going to react to the Joe Dumars press conference that he had on Monday because he shed a lot of insight into his vision for the team, and the top quality isn't one that you were expecting. We'll cover that. We'll get into the comments about Zion, responsibility, accountability. Is this what's going to finally make it work? And then we have injury updates and the plans for the rookies as well. So we've got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Okay. Let's get into everything here because Joe Dumars put out a number of words that I thought were pretty interesting from his press conference. And he kind of laid out what I would call like his vision for the new infrastructure with the team. But the big theme that really kind of came back around a number of times in this interview was his expectations of who he wants the players to be. Joe Dumars wants players who are obsessed with basketball. He wants guys that are obsessed with basketball. They don't want to just be an NBA player. They are just, the term you would probably use is hoopers, right? All they care about is basketball. Not even necessarily the NBA, but they just love basketball. All they want to do is play basketball. All they want to watch is basketball. And that sort of quality there. He wants guys who are obsessed with basketballs. And the first player he used to kind of describe this was Jordan Poole. The reason they brought him in was not necessarily because Troy Weaver, had been around him for a year, even though that's partially the case. It was also that, hey, this is a guy that's obsessed with basketball. And Troy Weaver went to Joe Dumars and was like, have you thought about Jordan Poole? Joe Dumars is like, I don't really know much about him. He's like, well, I just spent a year with him. He's a Joe Dumars kind of player. He's obsessed with basketball. They talked about Jeremiah Fears as well. Fears was doing 2-a-days in the gym so often that they basically had to lock him out of the practice facility because he was just getting kind of run down, having tired legs. And this obsession with basketball, Joe Dumars is hoping that it's going to lead to a team that plays hard every single night. That's the expectation. Establishing a tough, hard, competitive team, right? And that will lead to wins. He said versions of this in the past of, if you don't think you can win, well, you're not going to win no matter what. So having these guys be obsessed with basketball and then going out and playing as hard as they can is what he hopes, is going to lead to a lot of success. I personally think you need other qualities, but at least get what he's trying to kind of establish at the baseline here. Guys that want to come in and play hard. Simple as that. Look, it's the NBA. We see lots of guys who don't play hard. It's a fact, right? Or they're more obsessed with being an NBA player than actually playing and winning games at the NBA level and competing at a high level here. That's something that you've seen. Joe Dumars doesn't want those type of guys. He wants players that are going to come in and just work their butts off, essentially. And that's kind of the vision. He has said, you definitely aren't going to get wins unless you have that. And who knows if you'll win or what, but you at least need to have this established as the baseline. This ties into his comments about depth, something that, look, I kind of ripped on the show the other day, and I stand by that. But he wants guys that, it even kind of said, like, if we're 11 or 12 men deep, the star player's out, it could be anybody's night. I don't think it's as simple as it being anybody's night and you just winning a game. Your 12th man isn't going to put up the same numbers as Zion Williamson or Trey Murphy or Jordan Poole will. But he wants those guys that when they, that have kind of that next man up mentality of like, it's my time, I'm going to go and watch what I can do. And that are going to make the most of those opportunities. We'll kind of tie more of this into the rookies in the third segment of today's show here. So I get what he's doing. like, I see it. I don't know if this is how I would build a team, but I'm also not running the team, so it doesn't matter. And also, I probably wouldn't do a good job of running the team in the first place. I will readily admit that here. But this is Joe Dumars putting in new infrastructure. One of the things that kind of came from that was a lot of communication ideas. Everyone's staying on the same page. Joe Dumars says he meets with Willie Green every morning for them to stay in the same page. They watch the scrimmages and practices together so that they can kind of talk and bounce ideas off one another and figure out the direction that he wants this team to go in. So there's more of I don't even know how to put it, right? Like there's just more communication, I guess, than what he felt there was before. To be fair, David Griffin had a lot of that too, right? Like what Joe Dumars is saying here in this press conference, like none of this is new necessarily. No one is saying we don't want guys that don't compete. We don't want guys that are, that are obsessed with basketball. Everyone wants that stuff, right? Every GM is probably going to come out and say like the players we have are obsessed with basketball and all of that. Keep that in mind too. So there's kind of like a new era of the Pelicans happening here, new vision for it, but it's also still a lot of the same things, I think, when it comes to all that. We'll really get into that in the next segment where we talk about Zion Williamson here. But Joe Dumars communicating with Willie Green every single morning. Maybe that says something about Willie Green's job security. They have been pairing the rookies with vets as mentors. So Jeremiah Fears is spending a lot of time with Jordan Poole, with DeJounte Murray when he's going to be healthy. Derik Queen, even though he's not healthy and playing yet, I'll have an injury update for y'all on him in the third segment, is going to be paired when he's ready with Kevon Looney. You have Micah Peavy spending a lot of time with Saddiq Bey and kind of learning from those guys. Look, it's very similar to what David Griffin did with Zion Williamson and then signing JJ Redick to be the mentor for the team. They've done things like this before, not this regime, but overall the team has. Every team does something like this. One of the things that I thought was very interesting, which I hope we'll get more clarity on in the future, is the medical team. And, Joe Dumars said they spent a lot of time going over the process of every single injury and what they did and how can you get guys back out on the court and get them recovered quickly. And he said he tweaked some things. He did not go into specifics about it. I wish we would hear more specifics about what they're tweaking or what they found wasn't working. He said he couldn't really divulge injury information, which sure, I understand. But I think you could talk a little bit more about the process with that. Because look, that's one of the number one things that I get asked about a lot is, is it Oshner? And I don't think Oshner has anything to do with it really at all. Some of these injuries are just fluke freak injuries that there's nothing you can do about, but clearly they need to do some things. So just even hearing that they have tweaked some things, I think is an encouraging sign. Going back to the players who I'm like looking at my notes here, who are obsessed with basketball, mentioned that, a lot of these guys have been in and out of the team's facility over the past month and that he finds that to be very beneficial. You don't want training camp to be day 1, day 2. You want training camp to be like day 31. And he felt that the month leading up to training camp, media day, and all of that is really important because it gives you just a bigger jump on the season. And look, the Pelicans are getting started early by going to Australia. They're starting training camp a week before basically everybody else is, which can give them a bit of a leg up and be a bit of an advantage for the team. So hopefully this, these players who are obsessed with basketball and this extra preparation time they're getting with kind of all of the new things that they've done is going to really be beneficial for the season because the start of the schedule is really tough. But let's get into Zion Williamson, right? Like that's what this comes down to more often than not. There were two words used, responsibility and accountability, a lot with Zion Williamson. I'll tell you what Joe Dumars said and what I think, can happen this season with Zion Williamson and, answer the question, is this the year that it works, it clicks? That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what's in those accounts, right? Whether it's your 401k, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. So that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. And Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you put off things like organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch's going to do the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes. I did it. And then you see your spending habits. You get it in like clean, easy to understand and read data visuals and all of that. And you feel just in control of your money. And the best part, you don't have to touch a spreadsheet. Right? So planning for a wedding right now, we're on the same page thanks to Monarch Money. No fights. It's actually made it really easy, which is wonderful. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com or in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And don't forget, become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. You can also watch the Locked On Pelicans podcast on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. Same place you watch your Pelicans play. You can also now watch it on DirecTV if you weren't already watching it through an antenna or another way. So let's get into more about what Joe Dumars said regarding this team. And, he spent a lot of time talking about Zion Williamson. And part of his depth comments, are really about Zion Williamson and his lack of availability here. Joe Dumars said when he spoke at the Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club that, hey, one of the things I've seen people do here is like, we're just going to do the same thing and hope things are different. It's the definition of insanity, all of that. No one wants that. We've got to do things differently if we want to expect different results. And that applies to Zion Williamson too. He's spoken a lot about Zion Williamson and trying to give him more responsibility and accountability. Basically, Joe Dumars said, and this is a quote, "You don't get to be great and not be responsible," unquote. He basically explained that there's a big difference between talent and great. He said, you can have talent, but you won't be great. To be great, you need to have talent and that responsibility. So Zion, he said, has responded really well to all of this. All of their interactions have been positive. Zion has spent a lot of time in the building, in and out over the past month at the team facility, working out, being around the team. Joe Dumars and him watched the playoffs together. You saw Zion Williamson at Summer League sitting next to Joe Dumars, really trying to connect. And that's great. But he also said at the end of the day, you have to be responsible for everything that you do. Look, we can read between the lines here a little bit, I think. This is one of those situations where if Zion was doing all of this, you don't need to say this stuff, right? Look, and this is not to rag on Zion. I know I've been probably a little bit harder on Zion this offseason than, certainly than I have ever been before, because I want this team to win. And if he's not playing, they're not going to win. And so you got to do things differently, especially, as Joe Dumars is saying. So this isn't to like rag on Zion necessarily. It's just kind of a fact, right? If everything was good with Zion and he was taking responsibility, if he had the, accountability for things and was doing everything right, you don't need to say like, I'm trying to teach Zion responsibility, accountability, and that you don't get to be great and not be responsible. If he's doing all the things, you don't need to say this stuff. So this is actually like a very telling comment, I think. And while, I think people overrate like winning the press conference, think about how like few people lose a press conference. There are sometimes it happens. Mickey Loomis lost one a year ago, right? A couple of times. But you rarely see people actually lose the press conference, and it doesn't mean that things are going to go well or you're going to win games that season. So, in this press conference that Joe Dumars said, a lot of this to me is just like, yeah, this is what everybody says. These comments about Zion, when you start to read between the lines of it, are very revealing and honest, I think. And that, to me, was the biggest difference between him and David Griffin. David Griffin would almost protect Zion Williamson in a way with some of this stuff, right? And Joe Dumars is not doing that here. He's not throwing Zion under the bus, but he's basically saying, like, Zion, you got to be better here with the responsibility, right? The responsibility is to your body, to your team, to your career, all of that. It's not anything else. It's, hey, you need to be doing the things correctly. If we are going to make changes here to try and win, so do you. And that's what you're seeing, right? He also said, like, when we win, you're going to get most of the accolades. It's going to kind of be Zion Williamson number one, and for better or worse, it is. But also then when you lose, you need to own up to it, right? That means you're going to need to take the brunt of that. You're going to need to be the first person at post-game media availability answering about where things went wrong, right? Step to the mic and answer the questions and do it respectfully. Not in a defensive manner, but in a respectful way, and own what didn't go right and be the leader this team needs. That is actually different than David Griffin. They tried to put that kind of role on Drew Holiday. When Zion was first drafted, they kind of then made it more about Brandon Ingram. After that, this is kind of the first time where it's like Zion, this is on you now. You've got to deal with all of this in a way that he hasn't done before. And look, Zion has not done some of the best when it comes to some of this. That season where he didn't play at all, he didn't speak to the media once during the season. And they tried. We tried to get him for interviews. He had couldn't make him do it. I can even tell you, like people internally at the team wanted him to talk and encouraged him to do it, and he still didn't do it. This is Joe Dumars saying, like, if you missed the whole season, like, you need to talk about where things are and what happened and what you need to do and the changes you need to make. Joe Dumars is saying that here. He's doing it in, as Willie Green would say, like, right? Like, I'm not calling you out, I'm calling you up. That was like the Willie Green phrase here. And, it's kind of, this is done out of love for you to be the best version of you. That's what Joe Dumars is doing. Part of the thing here is we've heard a lot of this before. This is a little bit different than what David Griffin has said. But look, we don't need to pretend that David Griffin wasn't trying to make Zion take accountability and responsibility. He just might not be calling him out or saying this stuff out loud. But behind the scenes, they were trying to do this. Again, they tried to get leadership, mentorship for Zion. That didn't really stick. They've wanted him to take accountability by speaking to the media. He didn't do it. You run into that kind of situation. This isn't new and a new approach they're taking for Zion Williamson. We've been here before with this. We have heard this all before. Is it going to be different this year? We're getting to the definition of insanity again, right? We've heard this before, and we're hoping it's going to be different. David Griffin did all the stuff Joe Dumars is doing. David Griffin tried to do at least behind the scenes. Will it be different this time? I have no idea. No idea, right? If he will or not. If this team wants to be competitive, they're going to need him to do things differently so that he can stay on the court. And admittedly, he looked incredible when he came back from the hamstring injury. Was in the clearly, just physically, the way he looked was in the best shape of his career, played the best basketball of his career, and even on a minutes restriction, put up like career high in certain categories when it comes to the stats. That's all really good. And he was good on defense. Good on defense. Not just passable, but good. That's the Zion we've been waiting for. Is that the Zion that's going to carry over to this season? It's when adversity hits, when you're left to your own devices. How do things go? And they have not gone well for Zion Williamson. So I'm skeptical here, right? Because I feel like, it's Groundhog Day here. We're experiencing this all again, but it's going to kind of go the same. Or at least that's maybe like the PTSD when it comes to it. It's probably not a technical phrase for it, but you get what I'm saying. We've heard this all before. Will it be Joe Dumars? In year 7, is it going to finally change and click? I hope it does. Trust me, I hope it does. I want to cover a good team. It's going to be a lot of fun that way. But I am skeptical. Like normally I would be cautiously optimistic. That's not where I'm at just based off the past. I'm skeptical. I'm hopeful to be proven wrong. I could easily see how I will be. I want that. But given what we've seen before, it makes me nervous. We've heard a lot of this before and we've seen how it goes. Kind of as simple as that. What do you think? Do you think this is the year it really clicks for Zion Williamson? Is it Joe Dumars getting through to him? Or is it just, it is what it is? Let me know what you think in the comments down below on YouTube. So coming up next, I want to look at the rookies, Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen, because there was some interesting insight for what Joe Dumars said about them. Then we got injury updates for Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and others. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping into live action as the game unfolds. It just makes everything a little bit more exciting, adds a little bit more energy to Sundays. And you can probably make a bunch of money just betting against the Saints right now, truthfully. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if that bet wins, it's going to be $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel has been a partner of Locked On for a long time. $300 in bonus bets might be the best offer that I've ever seen from them. So go to FanDuel.com, download the app today, place your first $5 bet. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everyday. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. For your second listen today, Locked On Saints with host Ross Jackson. What the heck went on Sunday for the Saints? That was rough. Where can they improve? Where can things get a little bit better? Ross Jackson covering everything black and gold over the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So 2 more big topics I want to hit in today's show from Joe Dumars' press conference and my takeaways from there. And one of the things that happened around the rookies, and I love this, right? Depth is a high priority for Joe Dumars. Well, you just drafted 2 rookies in the lottery, meaning you think pretty highly of them. So you need to give them the opportunity to play and showcase their talent. Joe Dumars said, well, let me back up, right? Play them and let them showcase their talent. We've seen Willie Green kind of not do that a lot with rookies and be at least a little bit resistant to it. And I can tell you personally that a number of the players, kind of like the rookies after their rookie year, don't feel great about being here and under head coach Willie Green because they feel like they don't know how things are going to go and how they can get playing time or what makes the coach like not want to play him or how you succeed here. That has been a thing that I've heard. Joe Dumars basically said, the 2 people who are going to determine how the rookie year will go for Jeremiah Fears and Derik Queen are them. He said, you determine how your rookie year will go. If you're playing hard, right, obsessed with basketball, coming in with the right mentality, they're going to play you. They need to play you. And then it's not going to be on head coach Willie Green just pulling you. He'd said, you need to let rookies think they've got a chance to compete and that things aren't predetermined, because if you do that, they're going to come in and they're going to be demoralized if they think no matter what I do, I'm not going to get playing time. And I think that's smart, right? This comment of the 2, you determine the way your rookie year will go is not a shot at Willie Green, but it's taking into account, hey, there are some things with the coaching staff we need and want to have changed. And that, I think, is an important thing. This is Willie Green. You need to play these guys if they're competing. They might be making mistakes, but you need to let them kind of play through that and go out and compete and play and learn and grow. And if you want to be this 12-deep team, those guys are going to need to step up. But they're the ones that determine how their rookie year will go. I love that, right? They have all the opportunity in front of them. Will Jeremiah Fears, will Derik Queen, even Micah Peavy grab those opportunities and roll with it? Speaking of Queen, and on the injury front, Queen and Murray, by the way, are deep into their rehab. There are no specific return dates for them. Queen will come back sooner than Murray will, most likely. And I wouldn't be shocked if that's soon after the season. And I'd be willing to bet in a couple of weeks we'll get updates on all of that here. So I think that's going to be really great to see him finally get out there on the court and start to grow. Zion insurance a little bit, in my opinion here. They've said Derik Queen is doing all the conditioning. He's on the bike. He's running. He's on the treadmill. All of those things. Joe Dumars joked and asked Derik Queen if he knew who Lance Armstrong was, and Derik Queen didn't know, which makes me feel super old. And said like, you're going to look like Lance Armstrong on the bike. Or he said maybe I had heard of him or something. So no real updates on Queen and Murray, except the rehab is going well. The two big things to me were that Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are healthy. We absolutely love this. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are fully healthy. They are full speed and in full contact, scrimmaging, running up and down the court constantly. Losing Murray to the start of the year hurts and isn't fun. But at least Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are going to be available. This team has an uphill climb to the playoffs. And while Joe Dumars didn't say playoffs are the expectation, while Joe Dumars didn't say here's like the amount of wins that we're targeting or anything like that, you know this stuff matters. And so those two being healthy is really important. The team has kind of always started the season with like an arm behind their back. It was Trey Murphy last year, right? This year it's going to be DeJounte Murray. But at least it's like one guy, two guys with Queen, and not two, 3 or 4 starters, which it feels like it easily could have been. So them being healthy, absolute win, in my opinion, right? Obviously, Zion has been healthy if he's been there in the facility, flying up and down, talking with Joe Dumars, doing two-a-days and things like that. So right now, you have to kind of feel good about where the Pelicans are going into this season, assuming you like the things that Joe Dumars said about team building, etc. Let me know what you think. Do you like the idea of just putting a bunch of dudes on a team that are obsessed with basketball? Like, is that the criteria? Do there need to be other things? It's not like they're bad players either, but that seems to be kind of the number one thing they're looking for. What do you feel about the depth, about the rookies being the guys that determine how their rookie year will go? Let me know in the comments down below. So media day, I got to go run and start getting ready for that. I'll have interviews. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to be back with y'all tomorrow to recap everything. We got a big fun year here at Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow for the media day recap. See you next time.